In today's episode of the Motorhome Matt podcast,
we dive into the future with a close look at a new e-van. Could electric vans make realistic electric campervans?
In the news, the Supreme Court has ruled wild camping on Dartmoor is allowed.
And we answer your questions on the best SIM cards, getting air suspension fitted, and the stuff that goes in your water tank.
Is that water?
Water.
Welcome to the Motorhome Matt podcast. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Motorhome Matt.
Industry insights and expert advice for the world of motorhomes, caravans and campervans. And it's brought to you by thatleisureshop.com and sponsored by Ripe.
Now remember to follow on your favourite podcast app. And please, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and click the little bell.
Ding ding. In the news, the Supreme Court has decided you can wild camp on Dartmoor. Tell us about it, Matt.
So, some time ago, when did this story first come out?
Years ago. It's the legal process.
It wasn't, I'm not sure it was years ago, but landowners on Dartmoor wanted to stop people camping on Dartmoor, the bit of Dartmoor they owned, and tried to block them from doing it. And so the Supreme Court have just ruled that you can. They've overturned this protest by these landowners and said, no, everyone has a right to wild camp on Dartmoor. Let's just redefine again what wild camping is. So it's arriving on barefoot? No, on foot.
Yeah, not barefoot.
Or horseback.
You could
yeah,
get
why
barefoot.
not? Yeah. It's good for you.
Or horseback.
So on foot or horseback, pitching a tent.
With a backpack.
With a backpack. Yeah, backpack's fine. Yeah. But at sundown. And then leaving at sunrise, and most importantly, leaving no trace. It does not allow you to camp out in your motorhome with your heating and your hot water. That is not wild camping. So this doesn't arguably really affect us in our motorhomes. But there was, however, a restriction, wasn't there, on disability access. So people in wheelchairs having access onto the land and the ability to park in the disabled car park. That was stopped. So has that been overturned as well?
I think with the ruling, it just goes with wild camping. I'm not a legal expert, but I'll tell you one thing. Dartmoor is different to everywhere else in the country because it's a national park. And I know there are other national parks, but the Dartmoor National Park specified that if you owned land, people could wild camp. That was challenged. The Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, has now decided that you can wild camp, providing you follow those rules of leaving no trace. Whatever you do with your horse, I just don't know about the horse.
Or your backpack.
About the horse. But, or disabled parking. Look it up is what I would say.
But the good news here, though, this whole landscape we're on of restrictions on motorhomes and campervans, that's why we thought we'd report on this, because this is about some freedom being given back to us, that we can wild camp on Dartmoor.
Just on Dartmoor. So there you go. So you can take your motorhome, you can park it in a legal parking space, you can put your backpack on, take your tent down and wild camp on somebody's privately owned land on Dartmoor. That's not to say that you can pitch in somebody's front garden, but like I say, look it up. Now, can we finish this story? Oh, no, one last thing to say about it. It's the law until Parliament changes that law. So if Parliament decide to change the law through an Act of Parliament, then this Supreme Court ruling is null and void. But up till now, if you want to pitch on Dartmoor with your tent, leave no trace, you can.
You've probably heard me talking about Ripe for a while now, and with good reason. Their cover's solid, the price is fair, and the team in Manchester actually get the motorhome lifestyle. Loads of you have said how much you've saved by switching to them, and quite honestly, the feedback has been brilliant.
Yeah, and they're not just stuck behind their desks, are they? You saw them recently at Campervan Campout, didn't you?
I did, yeah, and they were busy. Their stand was packed with people queuing up, and not just for the freebies, though they were giving away some great bits, including one of our Pathway 4G routers, but also to actually talk about insurance. It was clear that people wanted to speak to the experts about this. Us motorhomers are techie people, and Ripe get that. They're not just selling policies, they do really listen to people.
And that's the key, isn't it? They take feedback on board and make changes. They know this lifestyle is all about freedom, and if your insurance doesn't work for you, it can really throw a spanner in the works.
Exactly. So 2 quick things. If you spot them at a show this summer, go and say hi and spend a few minutes checking out their cover and how much you could save on your insurance with them. Plus, you get 15% off your premium just because you're a Motorhome Matt listener.
Give them a call and quote Motorhome Matt over the phone or click the link in the description and the discount is automatically applied. It's the Motorhome Matt podcast. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Motorhome Matt.
It's brought to you with thatleisureshop.com and sponsored by Ripe. Okay, then, let's get into the podcast. Before we get into those vans, though, what's the latest on this ZEV mandate we keep on hearing about?
Yeah, the zero-emission vehicle mandate.
Is that what it means?
Yeah, absolutely. So the luxury supercar firms such as Aston Martin and McLaren are still going to be allowed to keep producing petrol cars beyond the 2030 date because they only manufacture a small number of vehicles.
Oh, so rich people are going to be okay.
Yeah, that's
the British
true.
establishment in action. Rich people are going to be okay.
Yeah, fair point. So petrol and diesel vans will also be allowed to be sold until 2035, along with hybrids and plug-in hybrid cars. Okay, so that's our little Toyota Yaris that we love. That's a little non-plug-in hybrid. The government is also going to make it easier for manufacturers who do not comply with the government's zero-emission vehicle ZEV mandate, which sets sales targets to avoid fines, and the levies are going to be reduced. So that's going to reduce the motivation for these manufacturers to comply, I think, if the fines are going down.
But the fines were huge, weren't they? Something £15,000 of vehicles.
£18,000 a car.
Shit, but I mean, that was just stupid. That's a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, isn't it? And these people are trying to run businesses, aren't they?
That's ridiculous.
They got factories, they got stylists and painters.
Honestly,
what? They've got people who
stylists,
but they're taking all the risks. They're taking all the risks.
This was always going to happen.
The government says you've got to do this, or we're going to charge you 18 grand. It was just ridiculous.
Yes, this was always going to happen. I think there's going to be more softening, I'll be honest, because I think the manufacturers are going to kick off even more. And I think a move to zero emission has to be a positive thing from the perspective of the environment, looking after the planet, looking after the people that live here and our own health. I get that, and that I fully support. But it has to be commercially viable with the landscape we live on. And until there are really, really viable alternatives, we have to work together to move toward a zero-emission world.
Yeah, it just seems to be government policy the last 25 years or so, is that you lump the responsibility for stuff onto the private sector rather than the government funding huge tracts of it and benefiting the private sector by pumping that money in and through it. So you get the advantage of the private sector, don't you? And the skill of manufacture, the speed of design, the brains behind it. But with government money, that all seemed to have been thrown away, and up to the point where they say we're going to fine you £18,000 unless you do what we tell you to do.
But I think this keeps happening. So this is where it's an interesting trend where these new kind of criteria, requirements, restrictions, laws are introduced, which are just, they're just draconian. Dare I use that term? They're just heavy-handed. And then industry responds with, whoa, hang on a minute. And then they soften. And that just seems to be the way we're governed these days. We see it all the time. But anyway, then maybe that's just my observation.
And it's not just the government that we have in power at the moment. It's governments, like I say, the last 25 years. It just seems to be a trend, which, to be honest with you, we all agree that cars, vehicles should have fewer emissions or no emissions. It's just, we just argue about how we get there, and lumping it all onto the private sector, I thought, was just a mistake.
And the problem is instability just doesn't it doesn't breed stability in industry. We need stability and certainty in order to thrive and survive.
So what does all this mean for us in the motorhome world?
So in the motorhome world, we're kind of this weird end of this because we want to go a long way at full weight. We're like the E-van nightmare and a real challenge for that sector. And one of the things I've been doing is trying to engage with that community to ensure we're not overlooked and not forgotten, because this move to electric vans is going to massively impact our little corner of the world and our pastime. And we're hundreds of millions of pounds worth, billions of pounds worth of industry from an affluent community and a growing community. And this will have a massive impact on our pastime. So I've been trying to campaign kind of behind the scenes with the EV world and making sure we're visible to them. And I think we've done it. I think, there's been some success. I'm in good conversations with a number of people from that world, including a chap we've got on this week, a very dear friend of mine. But in terms of impact to the motorhome world, I think it's going to happen. Vans are going to go electric, and motorhomes will go all electric. Already we've seen huge steps forward, strides forward with habitation electric, so the living area on lithium batteries. Sodium batteries are coming. I've seen some early developments in this, and they're amazing. Really light and barely any lithium phosphate in them at all, and that's the next step for battery technology. That change is happening, and then I think we're going to see as well where we're taking power electric from the power plant that's in the vehicle, so the battery drivetrain itself, and we won't have any separate habitation battery. So those changes are afoot, they are coming, and I'm watching this very closely. And what's fascinating is we've spent the last few years kind of whiteboarding and vision boarding what we think is going to happen, and now we're seeing some strides forward. And it's a fascinating time. I've always said it's an exciting time to be alive, to witness this change. It is now happening.
So today we're discussing the new Chris's, aren't we?
Pardon?
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans.
Get it?
No.
Chris Evans. Oh, for heaven's sake. I'm wasted here.
You are.
So who are you talking to?
So, Dotel recently went to China.
Yeah. And you missed your flight home as well.
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's another story. So I was terribly impressed, right? Super impressed by how advanced the Chinese are with adopting e-cars, e-vans, e-bikes, you name it, e-motorbikes. It is everywhere. And charging points are everywhere. They've just completely transformed the place. The air was really clean. It proved to me that a move to a zero-emission world creates a clean environment. China is proof of that. And I've always said and predicted we are going to see new names on the radiator grills of motorhomes. And those names are going to come from China. They're going to be brands we've never heard of. And it's happening. So there's a new brand being launched called Horizon SV. That's the name of the van. And it's a fascinating product. It is now available to buy in Australia, all over Europe, in the UK and Ireland. And one of the first Horizon vans has arrived in the UK, and we had a chance to go and look at it and explore it. And of course, it's made in China. And it's made by a company called Geely. Have you heard of Geely?
I haven't heard of Geely.
So Geely own Volvo, Lotus and Polestar. You've heard of them?
I have.
They are massive and they are incredibly well funded. They own Horizon. And I had a chance to catch up with my good friend Paul Kirby. The Electric Van Man is his handle on YouTube. And Paul had one of these Horizon vans in his possession, and he brought it to the recent Newark show and had a look at it. Right, I'm very excited to welcome Paul to this event. Paul is known online as the Electric Van Man and was once voted the 5th most influential man in the world of EVs, with Elon Musk at number 1. I suspect you're ahead of him now, are you? He's fallen out of favour, hasn't he?
Whilst I'm not a fan of the list, I do think I might actually be slightly more popular than him these days.
So, Paul, just tell us a little bit of background about you. You are in the world of e-vans, and you're very much an influencer in that world. And it's so great to have you here. Thank you for coming. And just keeping an eye on our world, because one of the things I'm really concerned about is as motorhomers, we're not overlooked as we transition toward electric vans, because it's happening, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I mean, I drove my first electric van really after I got into the van world. So I started out in traditional diesel vans some 20 odd years ago. But in 2004, I drove an electric Sprinter. So it was a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. It did about 40 miles, did about 40 miles an hour, and carried a bag of crisps. Finally, it's just got a little bit better than that more recently, and we've seen an incredible journey from there to here.
And what do you do, though, in that e-van world? What's your day job?
So about 4 years ago, I jumped out of the corporate world that I was in because the world needed a voice of electric vans, because there was a lot going on, there's a lot of misinformation, and what I've tried to do is help people, not you have to have an electric van, but you have to make an informed choice, not a uninformed choice. So I want to give people the opportunity to compare like for like versus electric versus diesel, and also make sure that the vehicle's practical, fit for purpose for your job.
So you work with companies then who manage a fleet of vans,
Yeah.
and that's your customer base, isn't it?
So a mix of customers that need to run the vans, but also the OEMs themselves, the manufacturers, to say, guys, this is what you need to do, which is kind of why we're here with the Horizon today, which we'll talk on later.
Yeah.
But I've helped them kind of get that vehicle right, get the approach right to the market, because I understand the needs of the user, but also the constraints perhaps of the OEMs and what they're trying to achieve as well.
And you've got a very active YouTube channel. You run a podcast called the EV Cafe.
Yeah.
You run lots of shows. You speak at lots of corporate shows, van shows, a commercial vehicle show.
Yeah.
You are the man, aren't you, when it comes to
Love a van.
Love a van.
What can I say? But yeah, and I do talk about them a lot. You'll have a job to keep me quiet, because I mean the EV Cafe is a great resource across all kind of vehicles, and you're welcome to tune into that. The Electric Van Man is my YouTube channel, and what I try to do there is to say, this is the van. I'm not going to give you my opinion whether it's a great van or a bad van, because there's queues of people to say this doesn't work and this is wrong. What I try and do is give you the insight and understanding of what works, whether it's practical and what you can do with it, how far it'll go, and the practicalities around this change to electric vehicles. Because not everybody gets it. It's not straightforward necessarily. You've got to think slightly differently.
You have. And I have big concerns about the feasibility of an electric van as a camper van and motorhome. Would anyone agree with that here today? Everyone is nodding, and there's hands in the air.
Tough crowd.
Yeah, you have got a tough crowd. We're a tough audience.
Absolutely.
Because actually we're a pain in the neck for you, because we want to go a long way whilst we weigh a lot.
Yeah.
And we want to take all our stuff. Yeah. And sometimes we want to take the wife, you know. Oh. And you see how many shoes
You've got to draw a line
got.
Somewhere.
And occasionally we take the kids. I mean, we're a nightmare for an electric van. But this change is coming. And I think one of the things that if you leave today, and all you do today is you leave feeling a little bit more clued up about this change. And I keep saying it's coming, because it is. And I think the word to the wise is get wise on this, because I think the more we know about it as a niche, and we are a niche for you, we're a niche within your niche, because the vans that Paul's researching and talking about are going to become the Campervans and Motorhomes donors for those in the future. Because you've got to remember, and we do forget, that the motorhome we're driving around is also a DPD delivery van. Yeah. The Fiat Ducato was made as a delivery van. It's an Amazon van. They're everywhere. And it's people like that that meant that we couldn't get chassis post-pandemic, because they went to all these huge delivery companies instead. Yeah. And we were overlooked. And I don't want you to overlook us. So thank you for coming and giving me the opportunity to have a chat with you today.
And let me just say on that subject, you're absolutely right, because I worked in the industry for Mercedes-Benz back in late 2000 and the noughties. And the campervan world was a very important world to anybody that produced a chassis. Now that has changed, there's no question, because it is really difficult. And you see the proliferation of vans that have been converted, when I think your preference would probably be the coach-built chassis that have gone. But they've gone into industry, they've gone into commercial uses, and you know that's challenging. And I do think that we absolutely have to focus on this sector and recognise its importance again in the sector. So I don't think you will be overlooked for much longer.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I do believe you. So let's go back in time, Paul, to over 100 years ago.
I know.
And we were talking about this. This is bizarre. So tell us how we were travelling around in the early 1900s.
So in the early 1900s, almost all of the local transport in the boat world was electric. There were three types of propulsion available, and they were in the car world or the vehicle world, and that was steam, petrol, and electric. And according to documentation that's well versed in the Smithsonian Museum in America, electric was the most efficient and most effective way of propulsion at that time. So somebody discovered oil, and that was the end of the conversation, because they just went hell for leather down the oil front. Now, to be fair, why wouldn't you? Because it was the simplest thing to do. Nobody had any concept of this impact on the environment business. But now we've done the science and done the maths, and the impact on the environment is quite considerable. The impact on our health is quite considerable. There is a lot of things that are impacting us because of diesel and petrol vehicles.
But
So
also,
now we're
but
back
also
to electric.
oil could be monetized
Yes.
far more easily than electric, I guess.
I guess.
It could be
depends.
taxed, and so governments can make more money out of diesel and petrol.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, we all know the history of the diesel engine, don't we? It was designed to run on, it was a waste product of creating petrol, and so diesel became the thing, and we're all told, yeah, go and get a diesel car. Remember this? Now we're told, no, don't get a diesel car, and governments have monetized it really successfully. So we're kind of going full circle. Would you agree?
That's where we're at right now. It looks like electric is the most suitable method of propulsion and fueling that propulsion of the available sources. Hydrogen is often talked about, and other CNG and other gases are talked about, but typically electric is proving very, very effective.
Okay, so let's talk about the landscape we're on now. The government are driving this change with the ZEV mandate, the Zero Emission Vehicle mandate. It changed recently, but this is a timeline. I'm sure you've heard of the ZEV mandate, and it means by 2035, all new vehicles, cars and vans, have to be non-fossil fuel. So they can no longer be diesel or petrol. They have to be electric, probably.
Zero emission, yeah.
Zero emission, yeah. That could be hydrogen, but we're very much down an electric road at the moment. And then there are alternatives, aren't there? But we're focused today on electric. We're just going to talk about that. So 2035 is not very long away. That's 10 years. That's not very long, is it? Most of us in this room, all of us in this room, I hope, will still be here. Not in this room, but still be breathing. We are going to let you out at the end. It's okay. But 10 years is not a very long time. And it feels like it's been rushed. But some of the pressures on manufacturers were recently relaxed. Can you just tell us briefly about that?
Yeah, as briefly as you can do with any government legislation. Legislation was designed to drive the change, right? So in 2020, it began to be laid out by Boris and his group. Then in 2023, they kind of had a bit of a wobble. And then in 2023-24, they created this ZEV mandate. The ZEV mandate has a number of percentages year on year that go up to complete sale of petrol and diesel cars and vans. Also, just as an aside, trucks as well, but not in the ZEV mandate, so that's slightly different. But so we've got a planned out trajectory. 80% of cars and 70% of vans need to be electric by 2030.
That's 5 years away.
That's 5 years away, less than 5 years. And then 2035, all of the rest. So, and it's a dramatic change, it is, for sure.
So in terms of vans, how many are currently being made that are electric now in terms of percentage terms of total production?
So percentage that is required this year, officially, is 16%. We're about 8%, and that's likely we'll probably get to 10, maybe 12% by the end of the year. Now, the relaxation of the legislation meant that the fines that were talked about, and were quite stringent, and manufacturers were fearing the worst, have been pushed back really in effect from 2027 to 2029, and they've also been lowered in the amount.
So tell us about those fines.
So the fines for each vehicle that is effectively deemed over the target, it was £15,000 and £18,000. It's now £15,000 for a van and £12,000 for a car.
So in real terms, if a diesel vehicle is made and it's outside of that target, it's going to be 15 grand more than it should have cost.
Yeah.
You and I got to pay for that if we're buying it. I'm not paying 15 grand more just because a manufacturer didn't make the target.
And I think this is the thing about pricing, because everybody's talked about price, and I don't know if it's a good time to talk about price, but price is going to be driven by two things. First of all, the increase in volume and availability of electric and the improvements in technology, but also the fact that much lower volumes of diesel and petrol vehicles will be made. So they will in turn become more expensive because of just natural volumes. But also, when you factor in all of the fines and all of the other bits and pieces like that, then suddenly those prices are going to go up and the electric vehicles will come down, and suddenly we're going to see the seesaw go the other way.
Okay, well, let's come back to that in a minute. We'll talk about pricing of new and pricing of used, because a used Tesla is a joke in terms of buying one. I nearly bought one this morning. Honestly, it was so cheap. Just looking this morning before I met with you today. So I want to talk about some huge elephants in the room. Every one of you is sat here thinking the same thing as me. range. Yeah? We want to go and drive to Edinburgh, don't we? We want to do the NC 500. We've been inspired to do it today. Yesterday we were inspired to do the Wild Atlantic Way, so the whole loop of Ireland. I can't do that in an electric van, Paul. It won't go far enough.
So let's take the NC 500. I know this one because I've done the NC 500
In an electric van.
in an electric van with
Oh,
lower
wow.
range than the vans today. So did anybody tell you to do the NC 500 or this Wild Atlantic Way and not stop?
No. I'm
Not
man
have
of
a wee,
I'm
not
man
have
of
a cup of
certain
tea.
age.
not. So you're allowed to stop, right? It's not like the TT or anything like that. You don't have to go around 180 miles an hour. You enjoy the journey. You're taking the slow road, right? This is a holiday, isn't it? Not a race. So you're going to stop. Now the NC 500 is really interesting because the Scottish government 12 years ago actually put in charging all around Scotland. There is a lot of charging. It doesn't always work at the moment. It's getting better, to be fair. But there is charging in all kinds of weird and wonderful little villages and towns, 50 kilowatt chargers that you could sit and, get a decent charge. But the ranges on vehicles have moved up. So the large vans, the vans that you use at the moment, used to be somewhere between 80 and 120 miles, that sort of range. Well, the Vauxhall or the Peugeot or the Fiat that you'll all be very familiar with as camper vans are now operating with a 260-mile range. So on their 111, 110 kilowatt hour battery. So they're big vehicles, but they've got a range, and that's measured at 50% payload. So give or take. So you've already got some of the payload. And yes, there's lots of things that influence that range, and this right foot thing here being the biggest thing that influences the range of your vehicle. But there is so many options now in the large van sector with a reasonable mileage. Now, if you're driving more than 180 miles in one go, then if you're like me, you'd need a wee or a cup of coffee or something. And you just find the right places to charge. There's a great company called, Wildfires, I think they're called. They have an ID buzz that you can take, but they will book you a route, and they'll take in all the most picturesque charge points and all of that sort of stuff. And you just park up, plug in, have your cup of tea, and enjoy the view, and then move on to the next place. So it's a way of thinking, it's a mindset, but also the technology is improving dramatically.
And I think that's the thing, it's a mindset. You make it sound romantically easy.
I know, it's easy, don't worry about it.
There's someone in our niche called Steve Radford, who I'm sure has a big YouTube channel.
Okay.
And he filmed himself trying to do Scotland. Did you see it? In his ID Buzz. And I think you've met Steve. Okay. And he just spent the entire trip trying to find charging points. Yeah. And he would get there and it was broken. Yeah. Or he'd get there and it wasn't compatible with the van. It was just a challenge every turn. So you make it sound far easier than I think it probably is.
And I'm sure I do, but so I'm the yin to others' yang in that sense. I have done the NC 500. I do know the problems that the NC 500 as a route holds, but I also know the possibilities that it holds as well. And the fact is that people are focused right now as we speak on improving that charging infrastructure. The fact that it's there in the first place means that you can build on it, you can improve it, you can repair it. And that process is happening in government. If you go across the main arteries of the UK now, there is high-speed charging, high-power charging, and the vehicles themselves are able to take that energy much more quickly these days than they could 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, it'd be 50 kilowatts. Today, it's 150 to 200.
I guess one of the things, I'm not an EV driver, so I don't have a plug-in chargeable car. We have a hybrid, a Toyota Yaris, which you don't have to plug in, and we love it. It's great. But I guess one of the differences, and the big difference between a charging point and a fuel station, is the fuel station's pretty obvious. Like, it's massive, isn't it? Whereas a charge point is tiny. Our local farm shop have just introduced 2 super fast chargers. I didn't even know they were there. And there's an app, isn't there, where ZapMap is called. Yep. And I downloaded it. I thought, I wonder what this is like. They're blooming everywhere. In fact, I found an interesting thing this morning online. It said the UK's charging network continues to grow at pace. There are now over 50,000 public charge points, with 44% more than this time last year. This was very recently written, putting the country well on track to reach 300,000 charge points by 2030. How many fuel stations are in the UK, do you know?
Yes.
Go on.
8,500.
8,500.
So, but let's give that its full context, because I think we in the EV advocacy industry get like a bit of a bad press for making things overly positive, right? And let's be honest. So each petrol station has about, let's call it 8
Pumps.
8 pumps.
Okay.
As a minimum, right?
So times your 8,500 by 8.
By 8, so you're up to 70,000.
So that's still a lot less.
And it also takes 5 minutes to fill your vehicle, not 35 minutes or 40 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever it takes at the so look, let's have it right. There is a long way to go, and 300,000 is probably too many, because what we miss actually is at home. About 60% of the population of the UK can have access to a driveway and put a charger on that driveway, and so that means that there's already 650,000 private charge points, in addition to all of the ones that we talked about.
So these are public ones?
Yeah, those are public ones, and these are the private ones, 650,000, and there's a mixture of businesses and private homes in that. And as your private home, you just plug it in and you charge overnight. But there is also an encouragement between businesses and private homes to share those chargers with other people travelling. Now, it's not prevalent yet, but it's going to become more prevalent. And so there will be other opportunities to charge overnight and do other things. I mean, you're not going to want to go and stay at somebody's house overnight, and I know you probably wouldn't want to park your motorhome there. They might not want you to park their motorhome there. But what I'm saying is there's much more opportunity to charge than we think, and the only reason we don't know about it is because we don't know about it. You don't know what you don't know, do you? And so if you don't know what you're looking at, don't know what you're looking for, can't spot it.
We also have a challenge, though, when we go to a campsite. If you're driving an electric car and you want to charge it on the campsite, in my experience and the campsites I've spoken to, they all say, no, you're not doing that here, pal. And I was watching a video that Peter did very, very recently. It was a Model 3 Tesla that had this big box on the roof. What was it called, Peter? A Dashaway. It is a hilarious video. It's very good, but it's a really interesting idea. It's like a roof box tent, but it's permanently fixed onto this Model 3, and you. Well, I said no. You jack it up and drive the car out from underneath it, and so it's like what do you call them? A demountable.
Demountable, yeah.
And inside the roof pops up. You can stand up in it on top of your Tesla, and it makes a rock and roll bed. There's a kitchen in it. You can cook in it, and you've got this amazing view from on top of the roof of this Model 3 Tesla. Now, it's very small production, but it's very innovative. And the chap who made it was asked the question by Peter, how do you recharge the car? He said, dead easy. He said, I talk to the campsite, and I recharge it on the campsite. He said, and often they say no, but I have a quick chat with them. And overnight, he said, I can gain 120 miles, I think he said, didn't he? But he had to educate the campsite on how much power he's going to draw, which, of course, he's happy to pay for. And the campsite said, well, okay then. And I think, for me, this is a journey of education that we all need to go on. Our industry definitely needs to go on. The manufacturers are kind of starting it. I think we're too slow at the moment. I think campsites need to go on this journey. But there's a great quote. I'll quote you, Paul. You said to me a little while ago, we're going to spend the next 6 years, you said, relearning what we've been doing for 100 years in terms of our cars. So once a week, we drive to the fuel station, we fill up with fuel, and then we go home and we have our week, and there's just fuel in the car. With an electric car or electric motorhome, you have to charge it little and often. And my kids, it's interesting, I liken this analogy to my children. They are constantly trying to recharge their phones. Dad, can I borrow a power cable? All the time. I'm always losing phone charger cables to my 4 kids. It's constant. And I think they will be very accepting of an EV as a result, because they'll just be used to charging stuff all the time. So there's a big education that we need to go on, and that is a big resistance, is it, to this change?
Do you know what? I just don't think there's enough education going on. And you mentioned the manufacturers. I do a lot with the manufacturers directly, but also the dealer groups. And I had a dealer principal, a managing director of a dealer group, go into Renault and Ford with my picture and went, we've got to pay for this guy to come and train our people because you're not doing the job. And that's the reality, that there's not enough going on in terms of education. And we within our industry are trying to educate. But the reality is this is being driven by big business. So the big companies that are getting the company cars and the ones that are making the big green commitments like BT and Royal Mail and British Gas and all of those kind of guys that are putting lots and lots of vans on. What we need is lots of information across a wide spread of people. And it's really challenging, and government need to take some responsibility for that, definitely. Manufacturers, the OEMs, need to train their dealers in order to be able to communicate with us in a way that we understand and we accept and we can get on board with. Because if we don't do this, we have got a problem. There's no question. We have got a problem because it's the small businesses, it's the people like you and me that buy our one car or two cars, for a family that need the information. We don't want the education of a big business because that's easy, right? You tell one person and they cascade it all through their business, easy done. But we want to tell the masses, and that's the purpose of the EV Cafe. That's the purpose of me with my YouTube channel. It's not my natural habitat. Was a corporate guy, but now I'm doing this because that's the way to get to the masses.
Well, we're very grateful to you coming today to educate us, because I think that's what we're on, is this journey, this learning curve. I want to just talk about residual values. I mentioned Tesla's Model 3. I was on Auto Trader this morning, and how much is a brand new Model 3? 45k?
Yeah, starts at 45, 49.
Yeah, 45k.
Like that, yeah.
So 5 years old, I can buy one for 11 grand retail. I rang a friend of mine's car dealer and said, I want to buy a Model 3 Tesla with 100,000 miles on it. It's still in warranty. The battery's 8-year warranty, isn't it?
Yep.
So I've got 3 years of warranty left, and the car's going to go for another 100,000 miles. I'm probably going to change the tyres. That's probably all. Mm-hmm. It's a very little servicing cost. How much am I going to buy it from you? Trade. He said, I could probably get you one for about 6.5 grand. 5 years old. And he said, if you push to 125,000, definitely 6 grand. And that's what they're worth. I mean, they're worthless, almost. That's a lot of car for not a lot of money.
Absolutely. And so when we wrap that into the van world, so let's take a Ford Transit that you might be able to convert. That type of vehicle, the right sort of size physically to be able to transfer into a camper van rather than the coach built. They retail at round about £52,000.
So I was looking at those as well. So yeah, brand new van, electric van, e-Transit Custom, and something else I never heard of that was electric, 50k.
Yeah.
And diesel, brand new, 47, 48k.
Yeah. So the prices are close in terms of this price, but then you go into a year old with a couple of thousand miles on it, and you are talking probably 50% of that price.
Wow.
Now, so that is both a good thing for those of you that want to buy a second-hand van and convert it and do that whole van life experience, right? But it's not so good for the overall market because the residual values are just way too low.
And that is not a trend we are used to.
No.
Yeah, the last 5 years, our motorhomes have gone up by 30%, haven't they? And if you're buying one, you're now it's a life-changing sum of money to buy a motor, as you've seen today as we wandered around together. Blimey, 120 grand.
I know.
Yeah, it's a diesel van.
Yeah. So the residual value is important, and the reason that we're getting this residual value, Tesla is a unique storm.
Of course.
But
yes.
The residual values in general for a used electric vehicle mean that instead of that premium that you expect to pay for an electric vehicle against a diesel or a petrol vehicle, you're paying around the same price. And that means that your total cost of ownership, the life cost of a vehicle, when you're wrapping in the maintenance and when you're wrapping in the fueling of those vehicles, then it's cheaper to run an electric vehicle if you buy it at the same price as a diesel vehicle or a petrol vehicle.
Because the cost of ownership
is so much cheaper. So residual values are good at the moment in terms of like if you're buying, but if you're selling it's not so good, and it's not so good for the new market because the residual value...
And the problem is those values are what make the headlines. Yeah. We don't hear about... I was chatting to a friend of mine who is a Tesla owner. He's just bought a brand new one, and he went to London and back for £7 of electric. Or maybe it was less than that. And he charged at home, and he said, I weighed it there and back, just about 20 miles left in the car. And he said, I would have got, and then he got home and charged it again. But he said, if I was paying that in diesel, it would have been 70 quid. A tenth of the price. And we don't hear about this. So That's part of the education, isn't it? The education curve that we need to go on.
We're picking both ends of the spectrum rather than talking about the bit in the middle.
Yeah,
we need to talk more about the middle.
We do, yeah, and you only learn that when you own an electric car. And my experience is people that own an electric car are absolute massive fans of the idea of an electric camper van. And I've seen that at numerous shows where we've had Q&As about it. But one of the challenges as well, I think, is this a road we're being forced down? I mean, it feels to me like our government...
Yes out there somewhere.
Let's not get too political, but it does feel like the government are insisting we go electric. And people say, well, hydrogen's a viable option, Matt.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah, and I mean, you say, no, it's not.
Oh, and I'll tell you why. Because
but you're not Hydrogen Harry, you're the electric van man.
I know, but I'm the electric van man for a reason, and it's a considered opinion, right? Hydrogen is vastly more expensive today than anything electric. I mean, it's just off the scale. And in terms of infrastructure, there's probably low teens of charging places. Now, hydrogen has been around a long time. This isn't its first rodeo. It's been around for a long, but it's just never taken off. It's not necessarily vastly more efficient than an electric vehicle. And basically, the hydrogen is creating electric to drive and propulse the vehicle. So we're still at electric. So if there's a better way to do electric, then just do the electric. And that makes more sense. So that's the reason I am.
Okay, well, we'll let you off then. So Bill Gates said an amazing quote, and I'll quote it. He said, most people overestimate what can be done in a year, but massively underestimate what can be done in 10 years. And we've seen this with the way we move toward EV. And I am a fan of zero emission and electric vehicles or non-fossil fuel vehicles. I'm a petrol head. I will still drive my petrol car, and I have a barn full of what my friends call scrap metal, and like an RX-8. It's got a Wankel engine in it. It's an amazing car. I've got a 1934 Austin 7, which is a phenomenal little thing. And I'll hopefully still have those in 10 years. But some of the innovation we're seeing in the last few years is really quite kind of sci-fi. One of the things, I saw a video of a country, I can't remember where it is, but they were stripping up the middle of the motorway lane and putting a charging kind of, other people have seen it too. So you charge while you're driving along wirelessly, quite what would happen to an animal stuck on the road and you're having a little kip and you drove over it. I don't know.
Well, I think it's probably likely not make it across the whole road, is it? It's not going to get there and then stay there.
But I can't remember where this was. But
there's Sweden and Norway, I think.
I was going to say, I think it was Norway.
Sweden, Norden and Nottingham.
Right. Okay, Nottingham.
So there is wireless charging in
Nottingham.
And I think there's going to be on a stretch of the M18 in Doncaster.
So this is wireless charging. We drive along and recharge our vehicle whilst we're driving.
Yeah. So the idea is particularly for heavy goods vehicles, and there's also what they call not cantilever, but anyway, the pantograph. Somebody said it. Pantograph. Thank you. Pantograph, which basically means that, like the trains, they just kind of go up and hit a wire and away they go. But these types of charging are innovation that are solving some of the problems. And what we've got to remember, we have solved just about every problem that gets thrown at us. As the human race, right? We're still here, aren't we? And we get a problem, we find a way around it, and we deal with it, and we move forward. And there are just so many different options around the charging of electric vehicles that make a lot of sense. Now, they're expensive at the moment, they really are, but they do solve the problem. So the point will come when that balance will be achieved. But there's so many different ways, and wireless charging is one really good example for the heavy end. As cars, you don't really need it. And you might think you do, but I promise you, I've done huge mileages in my cars, and I never really get a problem. Really don't. And because the speed of charging is really good, and also the range of my vehicles is very good. I've got 260 on one and 330 on the other. Right. And it doesn't, and I don't, if I stop, I charge. I don't stop to charge. Very rarely.
There's a lot of resistance to electrification of our little world here of motorhomes and campervans, and I understand why, and I'm resistant to it too. But what I find interesting is that whilst we might be resistant to electric powertrain, we're electrifying our vans with solar power, you see all these vans at the shows that are gas-free, and they've got an electric induction hob, electric cooker. They might have diesel heating, because heating's hard on electric. But we seem to be, as an industry, moving more and more toward full electric vans. But I find it interesting that there's this resistance. And you have a great phrase in your industry called FUD.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what it is. And FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah.
Now, I think, not if you agree, I'm a bit scared of this change because it's going to impact my holiday. Oh, we got people shaking their heads. Anyone else a little bit fearful of this change? Yeah, we got hands in the air again. Uncertain? Definitely. I think we're all, the ability to charge on our journey is a challenge. And doubt. I doubt whether this will work.
Yeah, so I don't doubt that it'll work, and for the aforementioned reason about our ability to overcome challenges and issues. The speed of charging is one critical issue, but we've already seen in China 5 to 6 minutes to charge up to 400 kilometers. And that they can deploy that. We're going to see megawatt charging hit our country. Well, there's actually megawatt chargers. There's a megawatt charger in Islington Council that charges their refuse collection vehicles. And that means that they can put 1,000 kilowatts into a vehicle in an hour.
So that suddenly makes recharging a motorhome same as filling up with diesel.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I mean, it takes me ages to fill ours. It's now 100 and odd quid.
Yeah, but the thing is about thinking differently, and you come back to this. The campervan, the camping sites need to rethink, and there will be ways of getting those to present viable options for charging en route, and they will make some money out of it as well. So this is the balance. We just need to think about it and not put up walls. But we recognise that there is fear, there is uncertainty, and there is doubt. We understand that. And I'm not the person that says, you must. I'm saying, look, let's find a way. And where it's possible, where your use case, because, if we compared all of your journeys and your reasons for having motorhomes and for the types of holidays that you go on, you will all have a different experience, a different goal, a different end game. And so some of you will be perfect for electric vehicles. Some of you, I don't think so, because you're choosing to go over here and do uphill and down.
Well, you made an observation earlier that most of us have probably driven around 100 miles to be here this weekend. Some of us might have driven more.
Yeah.
And then we'll drive. We're not plugged in. Most of us don't have a hookup. And then we're going to do the same to go home. And our expectation is we probably will be able to do that trip without stopping.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is we're going to get the range in the vans to be able to do that. And if we do, we could recharge in 6 minutes.
Potentially.
In the future.
Like a motorway service station, that type of thing.
We've got a couple of little slides I want to show you. This is a fascinating company. You just said the C word, China. Now, I was out there a few weeks ago. Oh, my goodness, what an education. Has anyone been to China? Yeah. They are decades ahead of us. Okay, it's communist rule. I get that. We were out there researching products that we might bring into the UK to sell into our marketplace, the motorhome campervan world, and it was phenomenal. The factories were like pharmaceutical laboratories. They're not staffed by kids. I have no doubt there are some that maybe they are. But in terms of this topic, electrification, I went to something called Canton Fair. In fact, I sent Paul a picture. I was stood by an electric lorry. And there was an entire show at this show, a whole floor dedicated to electric vans, electric lorries, and you have to go, it's amazing. And it's like the NEC, but about 10 times the size, this show. It was massive. We realised that 15.2, 15.3, 15.4 didn't mean floor areas of Hall 15, it meant floors of Hall 15, and we'd only looked at one of them, and suddenly we realised that the show was actually about 8 times bigger than we realised. But these guys were there. This is a company called Geely, who own the van that's outside. And we're going to go outside and have a look at it in a minute, and we'll talk about it in here first. But this is some of the range. Paul, tell us about the range of vehicles they're making and who are Geely.
So Geely, you will be familiar with some brands that they own, like Volvo. They own Polestar. They own Lotus. So they own those brands, and they own a lot more as well. So, all of the brands that you think might be UK or US have long since moved away from here. But these guys have a vast array of vehicles, and the Verizon, the van that's outside, in our industry, or in my side of the fence, the commercial vehicle world, we're very worried about new companies, because a lot of new companies have come. Some of you might have heard of Arrival. They were touted as being a potential motorhome in the future, but they didn't make it. And then there's been a couple of other companies that have almost got here and not quite. But these guys have been going since 2016 as part of the Geely brand. It's a massive brand. It's just hit the top 10 of the manufacturers in the world very recently. And the Verizon van has 20% of its domestic market. But they are building everything from small vans and bikes and all the way up through to 44-ton trucks. And it's all what they call new energy vehicles, battery electric vehicles.
So you say domestic market, I mean they've got 20% of the vans on the road in China.
New sales, yeah.
They are Verizon.
Yes.
And one of the things you said to me as well is that the electric cars will come first, when we were chatting a long time ago. And, of course, that's happened. I mean, they're everywhere, aren't they? And then, interestingly, the big development will go into lorries, articulated lorries, which sounds bizarre, doesn't it? But I guess they've got the ability to carry the batteries. And then will come the van that we need to make our motorhomes out of. Is that fair? Is that still true?
I think so. I think what we're going to see is... The truck world, because of the order within the truck world, so they have operating centres, they have to go from a fixed place, and they can put power in those places, and the reduction in CO2 emissions is really high impact for every vehicle that you switch over. The van is still high, it's much higher than cars, and also I think the vans, a lot of them are very much more car-like in their size. We probably see your type of vehicle, the larger type of vehicle, coming as a result of innovation that's happening in the truck world, and the batteries getting smaller, getting lighter, getting quicker to charge, and then they'll come down into that.
The van world.
Mean, it's speculation. They could all move at the same
It's still
space.
early days is what we're saying. And interesting, on this slide, you can see this is a motorhome.
Yeah.
And they have that in their sites. And motorhoming in China is becoming very popular. It's a new pastime for them. While I was there, though, I couldn't believe the number of autonomous taxis, these cars that don't have a driver. I didn't get to go in one. I wish I did. And also these little vans that were delivering food. And there's no driver. They just know the road. They're a robot, and they're just driving around with everyone else. It was incredible. I got in the lift with a robot that was delivering food to a room service. And this little C3P, whatever it was called.
C3PO.
C3PO.
R2D2.
Yeah, that R2D2, sorry, yeah. Got in the lift with me, and I stood there, and it's glowing blue like this with somebody's dinner in it. And I felt like I had to have a conversation with it. And the lift stopped. It didn't press any buttons. The lift stopped. It somehow communicated with the lift, and it got out. And I sort of went, bye. I went up to my room. It was quite bizarre. So they are so far ahead. And there are e-mopeds everywhere. Yeah. And charging points, literally, people are nodding, you've seen it. You plug into the lamppost. It's everywhere. Just whether it was free or there was an app, I don't know. But these little e-mopeds, there are thousands of them. And I'd love to know where all the petrol ones went. But they are literally decades ahead. Yeah. And I suppose in that culture, if you're told you're having an e-car, you're having an e-car. Yeah.
But I mean, the health impact. Everybody talks about China and the amount of industrial pollution that they're creating and all of that sort of stuff. The impact on health for them potentially could be incredibly positive by removing all the negative stuff in the atmosphere. I mean, we in the UK spend, I want to say, I can't remember the number, whether it's 40 million, there's 40,000 people die every year as a result of air quality related health issues. And we're spending billions through the NHS on keeping people well or dealing with so if they're going to save money, as an economy, there is a completely different impact.
Well, and again, the rhetoric of China is, it's smog everywhere, you can't see. Absolutely not true. The sky was clear. absolutely clear. There was no smog at all. And over half the vehicles were electric driving around because they scared the life out of me because there was no noise. This is a Verizon campervan.
The van that we've got outside has been converted. The interesting thing about it is they've done it with camera rails in there for live streaming and all that kind of stuff, because that's really big in China, that, you know, even as you're out and about, you could almost have a little portable karaoke cabin and all that sort of stuff. They really go for it. But it's a cool conversion. Now, whether that's a suitable conversion for us here in the UK, a couple of people have asked me, would we take this one in? Would Verizon bring this vehicle in? I've said probably not, because we like what we like, don't we? We like to trust the Adrias and the Swifts and the...
We do, but also the style. I mean, you can't really see much of this campervan on screen, but their styling is not ours. No. They haven't quite got that yet, but that ain't going to take them long.
Their beds are a bit smaller as well.
They probably are a bit shorter. So this is the van outside. We're just going to talk briefly about it, and then we're going to have some questions, and then you're very, very welcome to go out and touch and feel it. We can't drive it anywhere, unfortunately, because it's not registered on the road. But Paul, just talk us through this van.
We got not charged.
Yes, flat.
Rude.
One of the interesting things, there's no B-pillar. So here, look, I know the van out there, and the one in this picture has a bulkhead. But the seatbelt, when you open the door, the seatbelt goes out with the door. Yeah. And if you look at the campervan picture, which is really why I wanted to use it, look at that open vista. Yeah. I've got an Adria Twin, which is a panel van with a sliding door, and I sit in that front seat, and there is a post in the way. The idea of not having that's really quite appealing. I think that's cool. Yeah. And that's crash tested, it's safe.
So in terms of safety, it's Euro NCAP Platinum rated. So it's the highest possible achievement in terms of safety. And of course, a lot of the Chinese vehicles are very, very big on what we call ADAS features, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. You know, so beeping at you and adjusting the steering and doing braking for you and all those good things.
So tell us a little bit then about this van specifically. This is the first one in the UK from China.
Yes, so the first.
That's amazing.
So it's not the first Chinese van.
No.
But this is the first L3 H3 that van. So it's brand new. They're only just being sold. So there's no sold vehicles on the road anywhere in the UK.
That's cool. Isn't it? It's come here to the show.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they were really keen actually. So when I said to them, I put the idea to them and said, look, you know, can we say, oh yeah, great idea. You know, we'd love to kind of help people understand what we do, especially because of its camper heritage. It's got a natural fit for the industry. So there's a couple of things that I think. So the coach-built version, the chassis version, is not going to come for probably 6 or 9 months, probably into 2026. But the L3 H3, which is this, that means the length is the longest length and the height is the highest height, and it gives 13 cubic meters, is available now. These vehicles are very efficient in their use of space. So the small footprint of the vehicle physically, because they use the strapline Born Electric, because it has no diesel comparison. You're not sort of, forgive the phrase, bastardizing a diesel van to make an electric van. You're just creating an electric van from the ground up. It's a very flat platform, so there's lots of use of space. You can move the driver as far forward as you possibly can to create a longer amount of space. So this compares in physical size to a Transit Custom, but has about 1 meter cubed extra over and above the Transit Custom in its exact same size. And the technology and the driving experience is really good. And this is the first commercial vehicle, to have a double wishbone front suspension. So double wishbone front suspension makes that driving experience that much nicer than the standard leaf springs that you would normally expect to see on a van. So that's a plus point from a passenger version. Obviously, there's a lot of technology on it, the screens and the switch gear. We've actually got some genuine good old-fashioned switches, which is good in the commercial vehicle world because, you know, gloves or ham-fisted thumps get the action done rather than having to scroll through lots of menus and whatnot. And it's just nice and easy and clean and simple. You've got a nice through space, so you have actually got 3 seats in this one, but obviously from a campervan motorhome perspective, you would just have two seats, lots of space, nice flat dashboard so that you've got lots of space there in the front as well, so it doesn't impose on the cabin
It's
area.
a very nice place to be in the cab, I have to
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
and you'll see for yourself if you've not already. But come on, tell us then, how far will it go?
So there's 3 different battery versions, so 60, 80 and 106 nominal. So the 60 will probably take you 160 miles or something like that. The
160 miles as a camper van or an empty van?
So they're never measured empty. They're always measured with payload. So not full payload, but around
So
about
with a
50,
load in it?
Yeah, with around about 50% payload. And then you lose around about 2% per 100 kilos as a rule of thumb. So if
Right.
you've got half payload of 1,000 kilo payload van, which the one outside, so the biggest version has 1,000 kilos as payload.
Okay.
This version has 1,350. It's smaller, but you wouldn't use that as a camper. Well, you could do, I suppose. But it's got 1,350 kilos.
So to give us a benchmark then, how does that compare to something comparable like a Fiat Ducato?
So the Fiat Ducato at 3.5 tons
Yeah.
has around about 1,250 to 1,300, I think.
So this has slightly less
Slightly less payload in the large van
at 3.5 ton.
at 3.5 tons.
So there's a new rule that government
is.
are about to rubber stamp that if you're driving an all-electric vehicle,
Yeah.
you can drive 4,250 on a B license.
Yeah.
You don't need a C1. So does that get added on to that 1,000?
Yes. So basically what you would end up with, and just a quick sub-note that would be a footer note, is that's with 2 passengers. So most vans the payload is given with no passengers, but it's 2 passengers for this specific van.
So in our world, we give 75 kilos for a driver.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
That wouldn't cover me.
Nor me.
Just you.
No. You're too generous, man.
Used to.
Long time ago.
But you're saying a van, its payload is calculated with how much
This
weight?
particular van is
With 3 people
with
in it?
2 people in it.
2 people, right.
2 people
okay.
in it.
Right.
So that 1,350 is with 2 people. The 1,075 is with 2 people. So that's all payload that you get to use. And then if you have this 4.25 ton derogation, which it isn't currently available on this van, because of the manufacturer, not because of the legislation. The manufacturer has had that feedback now. So this is my job, right, to tell them, guys, you need to utilize this dispensation. And they've gone, oh, right, okay. They've got it in China. They'll do it. So they'll bring it over and we'll get that extra 750 kilos. And that means that you get up to 1,800 kilos in terms of build payload. So whatever you're going to build into that van.
Yeah, but for us in the motorhome world, that build payload's great. It means we can get better quality motorhomes with better materials and have better payloads to take her shoes and my wine.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's what we need.
Absolutely.
So actually, electric vans become a better solution, don't they?
Yes, and again, but there is that. We've got to be clear in terms of the yin to the yang. We do lose that 2% for every 100 kilos. So if we go beyond that too far, then we get that.
But
as well.
still, I think doing the maths, we would still be ahead.
Yeah, you'll be in good shape. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is Verizon. There are other brands though that I came across while I was in China. And you know that thing where you see something and then you drive around and you see them everywhere? You know, think I'm going to buy a red car and then every car is red. I've been driving around over here and at every turn I seem to see a BYD car. Build your dreams. And I drove past their headquarters. Oh my goodness, in China, it is massive. They are huge.
Oh yeah.
And we are going to see, I am convinced we're going to see BYD vans. Are they in the pipeline?
Yep. So,
which means we're going to see BYD on the front grille of our motorhomes.
I would almost I would say that they are nailed on for that, because so I saw and feel free to look at my YouTube channel and see it there, Electric Van Man. Don't forget. I did just a walk past video, point of view video, me just talking about it, walking around this van. It's had over 50,000 views, which is a lot for little old van world. But it's a huge van, so it's 18 cubic meters. So that's as big as many of your coach
How many
built.
cubic meters is this one now?
This one's 13.
Right.
So another 5 cubic meters. So it's similar to the type of cube that you would expect to see in your coach built Luton style vans, that come out of the side. So a lot of space. BYD are well known because they started out in batteries. So that's what they did at first. Then they went, well, we might as well build the rest of it, and did a very good job of it, and are now beating Tesla in terms of monthly sales.
Yeah.
So they are significantly likely to become that. But the van world, absolutely, big vans, perfect for the camper van world. Obviously still focused on the commercial world at the moment, but they're in Europe now, and we'll expect to see them in the UK within 12 months, I would say, for that van. And then if somebody's bright enough and clever enough, they'll grab it and convert it.
Well, yeah, we'll come to that in a minute. So what I want you to do is, as you're living your life throughout the rest of this year and next year, is start looking at radiator grills. And if I see someone kneeling down in front of one looking at it, I'll know you're in this talk. But start observing the brands that you see on the fronts of vans, because there are makes that I've never heard of. And we're very used to Fiat, to Peugeot, aren't we? To Citroën, to Mercedes, to Ford. All those brands are the kind of mainstay. MAN have made a resurgence recently in campervans and motorhomes, but there's a lot of change coming. And we've got other brands coming here from China, MG. Now, we've known MG for years. We grew up with them, didn't we? They're now a Chinese brand. XPeng is another one.
Yeah, and the van version of MG is Maxus. So Maxus is the brand that will be
Which, of course, has been here for years already.
Been here for years in some ways. They were under the LDV brand many, many years ago, built in Birmingham, always guaranteed to do at least 10 miles in their lifetime. They weren't the most reliable of vehicles. But there's lots of brands. And Iveco actually is a really interesting brand as well. I know that they're not a typical converting vehicle, but they've got up to 148 kilowatt hours of battery available.
What does that mean in terms of miles, typically?
Well, it depends how you use it, and depends on the thing that's built on the back. But, upwards of 250 certainly, if you use it in the way that you would expect to use a motorhome. I would say in that sort of order.
So this is coming, as I said at the beginning, is a change that's happening, and we need to get clued up. We need to get educated on this, because otherwise we're going to catch a cold. The question I've got, though, which you alluded to earlier, is how do we get these manufacturers of these vans talking to the manufacturers of our motorhomes? And I guess it's just raising awareness, keeping contact between our industries, and encouraging both to learn a bit about the other.
We just need to remind, so the OEMs that have never played in this space are the likes of Verizon. Ford have played in this space a little bit. I don't think they've really ever taken it seriously. Mercedes have played in a little bit. But all these new manufacturers, this is a real opportunity, because we know how many vehicles used to be sold into this sector as chassis and that sort of thing. And I think it's my job, it's your job, it's all of our job to make the manufacturers aware of the opportunity that is in front of them, and to help them find the fix that would enable most of us or all of us to take a vehicle that actually is in keeping with the countryside. It's quiet, it's silent, it's not putting out diesel fumes into that area, and I think we'd all prefer to do it if, like for like, we didn't have to compromise. But it's about how to navigate that world of compromise and get to a point where, do you know what, I'm comfortable, I can go with
and I think we forget that, don't we? We just see the compromise and the inconvenience that's put on us by having to have this electric van. But actually there is a far bigger picture and a far bigger global impact. We're actually protecting the thing we love, which is the countryside we want to visit, which is kind of ironic.
And it's so much nicer to drive. Can I just ask a question? How many people have driven an electric vehicle? Okay, so quite a few.
Over half the room.
And would you say that it is a really good experience to drive an electric vehicle versus a diesel or petrol?
No, so we got some no's.
So we got the odd no, but mostly never go back.
It broke down, says the young lady at the back. Okay.
Oh, see. Yeah. So I would never advocate the hybrids, unfortunately. But everybody's got a different experience, and I know the negative experiences will rise to the top. But the statistics will say that the voices in the room that have been positive and would never go back, that is the vast majority of the experience of people out there in the marketplace. There are definitely some situations that aren't good, that didn't work out, and they're or amplified by the fact that it's electric, because there's not enough people to repair them.
But then internal combustion didn't have a flawless start, did it, when it started off?
No, of course not.
And there was huge resistance to it. And it's a true story. Farmers used to run a rope across the road between telegraph poles or posts to try and decapitate the people driving petrol cars because of the noise and the pollution. They hated it, and they tried to.
I'm stealing that story.
Injure people. It's a true story. Can we have a massive show of appreciation to Paul? Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate it. I think we are genuinely very fortunate to have it all here, so you and the van, so thank you. Now, Peter, we're talking about electric camper vans, and we've just had a brilliant session in the Advice Centre talking about the future of them. It's coming in 2035, all new vans and cars will be electric. They have to be non-fossil fuel. It's a government mandate, it's called the ZEV mandate. And you're fearful of this change, aren't you?
I'm not fearful. I've just not had a great experience with electric vehicles.
What was your experience?
Well, I had one recently, and I had it for a couple of weeks, went to try and charge it. First time, the app didn't work. Second time, I had to download a new app, and I stood in the rain watching the clock going round on my phone. Eventually got in the car to get out the rain. Still the clock's going round on my phone. I gave up. I went to a brand new Shell petrol station where they got these latest chargers, got it to work, but I had to sit there for 45 minutes rather than 5 minutes with the pump. And then when I take the charger out, expecting it to say you've spent £40, 57 pence or whatever, it doesn't tell me. I've no idea what it cost me, whether it was cheaper or dearer than...
But to be fair, that wasn't really the fault of the electric vehicle, that was the fault of the app. Was it not?
Well, it's the whole charging system.
Okay, yeah, so you had a bad experience.
Yeah.
Which is not great. Now, we're here, as you say, at the National Motorhome Campervan Show, and we have got one of the world's, or the UK's first Chinese vans here at the show from a company in China called Verizon. And I've got my good friend Paul Kirby to bring it on. Paul, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Peter, good to see you.
Now, Paul, you're the electric van man.
Yes.
And you are a huge influencer in the world of electric vans. Now, Peter's had a bad experience charging an e-car, and I'm new to the whole thing too. I'm really excited about this change. Peter is less so. That's an understatement. But I want you to hear our challenges as an industry, because it feels like we're being railroaded into this change, a ZEV mandate, and where new diesel vans won't be available to our industry to make the motorhomes and campervans we love. We have all those obvious elephant in the room issues of range and the ability to charge it. Peter's experience is probably not alone. It's not the first time.
No.
Peter, what's your view of our industry in terms of manufacturers adopting and getting ready for this change?
I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg, because even with hybrids, which you'd think might be a stepping stone, I asked one of the manufacturers, they offered it on the price list at the October show, how many hybrids did you sell? None. So we're going to take it off the price list. Electric camper vans, well, you try and find one here, there isn't one.
It's very true, there isn't a single e-van, not even the Buzz.
People dabbled with the E version of the NV200, that's a van you can't buy anymore. And nobody seems to be even looking for a replacement for that.
And I agree that the manufacturers have to take this sector seriously. They used to, and then the pandemic came along. We know that chassis got taken away, the vehicles that you would build on for a motorhome. And back in my day, in the early days working with Mercedes-Benz, this was an important sector. And I think that has been lost a little bit over time. What we have today is a number of vehicles that can do a job. I completely agree that the ecosystem around an electric van has to work, and it has to work for everybody. And if we've got apps that don't work, and if we've got charge points that don't work, and payment systems that don't work, we've got a problem. And these are problems that we've got to solve. What I'm here to say really is that the industry generally is aware of your experience and is aware that people will arrive at a charge point and it doesn't work, or the payment system doesn't work. or the vehicle doesn't suit a particular use case, and that's really important.
But how do we progress this? Because the Swifts, Baileys, Heimers, Adrias of this world are not going to invest in building electric camper vans if the buyers aren't interested in buying them.
And I agree with you, but what I will say is that if we get the right use case and the right vehicle that's fit for the purpose of camper vanning, then you're going to get people buying them. We've just been with this vehicle today, and for the talk inside, lots of positivity around the hope that they will work, because we want to be in an environment like this where we're not putting out diesel fumes, we're enjoying the silence of the countryside, but we're being kept warm by an electric heater. We're electrifying all of the functionality within the camper vans today. Well, why not electrify the drivetrain as well? If we can make it work and make it fit for purpose for the use case. Now, it's not for everybody today, but it is for some today, and it'll be for some more tomorrow, and the pace of change being what it is, it will be for everybody in due course, but we've got to get there.
Well, we're very honoured, aren't we, to have this here, the first one in the UK from China. And thank you for bringing it. Can we have a look inside? I want you to open the doors and show us the first quirky feature.
This is the first quirky feature, and this is, Peter, we're trying to give you some hope for your industry a little bit. So, side sliding door. First of all, it's quite big.
A ding door.
A ding door.
As opposed to a sliding door.
Yeah. So, first of all, it's quite large, but then it is made all the larger by the removal of a B-pillar. Now, obviously, as you convert it to a camper, you would get rid of all of this, and none of that is structurally important, so that can all go. The structure is all done in the outside edge and the roof of the vehicle, and so from a safety perspective, it's Euro NCAP Platinum rated. So even without this element, it's got the strength here, the seatbelt is here, it's out of the way, and you can then enjoy all this glorious countryside.
That is very appealing. I mean, I regularly sit in this seat in our van conversion.
Doing nothing,
Drinking wine.
You're drinking wine. Yeah.
He's obviously got the missus well trained.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this B-pillar blocks my view. Yeah. And one of the reasons we love having a van conversion is this sliding door. Yeah. The fact we've got this big open vista. In a coach built, I've had a lot, as you know, you get a very narrow door and you kind of shut the world out. Yeah. Even with the door open, you are still trapped inside. A van means you're bringing the outside in. This is amazing.
It's like bifold doors.
It's incredible.
Bifold doors.
Okay, this is a novelty, but our market is very conservative.
Yes.
If I was to bring a camper van here based on, I don't know, a Hyundai van, people wouldn't buy it because they go, oh, everything's based on Fiats, Peugeots, Mercedes, that sort of thing. So they won't even have heard of Horizon.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there anything else about this that's better than Ford, Volkswagen, Mercedes electric vans?
So from an electric van perspective, I would argue yes. So Ford have already built into the back the ability to take power off, so plugs. Yeah. So we've got 3 plugs instead of 2. So and 3.3 kilowatts instead of 2.4. You've got a 106 kilowatt hour battery in this vehicle. The Ford Best is 89 kilowatt hour battery. You can charge this at 140 kilowatts. Now Ford can charge quite quickly up to 180. In terms of, Ford is a good van, and their extended range vehicle is actually a really good van. So but this comes with everything that you would expect to get from any van, and a little bit more, and good solid range. The warranties are everything you would expect. The technology in the front of the vehicle is everything you would expect, and at a price that is reasonable also. Because when you go to the bigger and extended range vehicles of the European manufacturers, the price starts to creep up north of 60 and 70,000. Whereas
just for a van?
Yeah, just for the van. Yeah, forget the conversion. Yeah. So 57,000 for this, and 52,000 after the grant. So, with all the spec on it that you've got.
Which is very comparable to a diesel equivalent retail, isn't it? They're 50k.
Retail. Yeah, for sure.
Now, you mentioned range, and that's the big elephant in the room in this topic, isn't it? Yeah. So what could we realistically expect, not just as an empty van like this, but once it's converted?
Once it's converted, you would expect, so the standard official range is 220 miles for this vehicle with the roof height and the length and the battery size. So 220 miles. That's usually measured with around about half of its payload, and this currently has 1,000 kilos payload, 1,075. You would take 500 of those, and then so you'd lose another 10%.
Yeah.
So you'd be down to around about 190.
Yeah.
And then I think you'd lose a little bit more for real worldness.
Yeah.
And so you're probably looking at 170, 180, depending on how you drive.
Yeah.
Now the biggest variance, of course, is the right foot,
Yeah.
how we drive as
Yeah.
human beings. But weather plays a part, wind plays a part, as it is here today.
Yeah.
All of those things impact. So
You say the
take-
driver's right foot makes more difference than the weather, because I've talked to people that live in cold countries and they said the range is terrible in the winter. Is that less of a factor
that
then?
was true.
Right.
Now the vehicles are coming with what they call heat pumps. So that they pump heat around the vehicle through gel or fluid or whatever, pump that around the battery of the vehicle, and that keeps the battery in a more optimal temperature. Can't deal with all the variances, but both heat and cold both affect a battery unprotected.
So I'm still going to be able to go away in my camper in December.
Absolutely, yes. You're not suddenly going to drop to less than 100 miles range.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
but it will impact slightly,
Yeah.
and it also it impacts slightly the charging speed as well. So whereas you might be able to get in normal temperatures 10 to 80% in 35 minutes or so, it might take 45 minutes because it's cold and electricity travels differently in cold temperatures. I mean, these things are very variable and it'll depend on the technology being used, but all it means is that you've got to take every number that's ever pumped out by the manufacturer with a pinch of salt.
We're used to that.
Yes, this is it, right? And then work it out for yourself. The best way to do is to experience it, which is the real challenge that we've got, because we don't have demos of these flying around. To your point earlier about the manufacturers of the converted vehicles being able to give somebody a vehicle to go and try and test.
Yeah.
We need to test these vehicles converted in the real world, doing real campervan stuff, so that everybody can get a confident approach to the vehicle.
And get educated. And you said it's all about education. We need educating. We want to educate you on our niche, because the decisions you're making for fleet are going to have a big impact on our little pastime of going away in that same van, but as a camper van or a motorhome. So it's really important that we're all clued up on this.
I think if you give somebody the choice, I'm just taking Ford Transit as an example, but you can have that as a diesel, a hybrid, or an electric one. People go, I'll have the diesel one because that's what they know. But this, you can't have a diesel, so we need somebody to convert this and make it look like a nice camper van, and then see where we go from there.
You've thrown the gauntlet.
Yeah, so if you're listening, come on, come and talk to me. Let's get one done.
Do it, please do it. Yeah, and keep us on your radar. We're a passionate bunch of people. We're a passionate bunch of people.
Maybe next year we'll have the camper van version.
Let's hope so.
Now you're talking.
That is a gauntlet down, isn't it?
You just want a free holiday.
Hey, I'm testing it first on the North Coast 500.
Good luck.
So that's Paul Kirby, otherwise known as the electric van man. So, Matt, can you see converters jumping on these?
I think we will. Their only option at the moment is the Buzz, the ID Buzz, and others have disappeared into the market or from the market. So anything new like this is exciting. And it was brilliant talking to converters who were all intrigued. We got challenges around at the moment. Payload. I think it's a camper van, so a panel van conversion. Yes. It's already viable, and in fact it's already been done in China, as you heard. Making it into a coach built, we're not quite there yet, but it's a matter of time before a heavier weight van comes along, and then we'll see I think independent converters innovating, and then mainstream manufacturers either buying them or adopting them into their fold, and I think it's coming.
Okay then, so what's going to happen to our diesel motorhome? Should I put off buying one now then?
No, definitely not. No. I mean, these are not going to be cheap. They are going to carry a premium price. And I think the reality is your diesel van is going to hold its value for some time. And remember, this big ZEV mandate change doesn't mean your diesel motorhome has to disappear. Not at all. The diesel is going to be around for our entire lifetime.
And you can still run them, can't you?
Of course you can.
After the ZEV mandate.
What's going to happen is the cost of diesel is likely to go up. We talked about this before. And where you can take it is going to become more restricted. So with ULEZ. so you won't be able to go into the cities. But thankfully,
ultra low emission zones.
Yeah, thankfully for us, we generally want to go to rural locations in our motorhomes, not into a city. So I think the impact of this is owning a diesel vehicle is going to become more expensive. Owning an electric one is also going to become expensive. I don't think they're going to get cheaper, but I don't think the price is going to crash on a diesel van. I think we're going to see the price of diesel going up as electric comes down. And we talked before about price parity between the two types of power plant. I think we're going to see that. So I would still happily, in 10 years' time, unless there's some massive development, buy an electric motorhome, or I would consider a diesel motorhome.
Okay, thanks very much then, Matt. So basically, keep your diesel motorhome, or if you're thinking of buying one, still make that purchase. There's years to go before all this becomes normality, I suppose, is the right word, isn't it?
As I say, it's an exciting time to be alive, to witness this change. It really is exciting.
Okay, Matt, it's product of the week time, and what's been saving your bacon on the road recently?
Well, it's something I've come to rely on a lot when I'm travelling abroad in the motorhome, especially when you're hopping between countries. It's an app called Saily. It's basically a digital SIM, an eSIM, which means you don't need to mess about with swapping cards or risking your usual mobile plan getting hammered by roaming charges.
So how does that work then? Is it like pay as you go?
It's exactly that, yeah. You download the Saily app, pick a plan for the country you're in, or for a bunch of countries if you're on a proper tour, and off you go. You're online in minutes. It works in over 190 countries. So unless you're off somewhere completely remote, you're covered.
And that's handy as well if your signal drops the second you cross a border. I've been there, done that.
That moment when your map disappears, your campsite booking won't load, and you're stuck on the side of a road somewhere in France, wondering which way's north. Yeah, been there too. Saily fixes all of that, and they even bundle in web protection. So if you're using a campsite Wi-Fi or a dodgy cafe connection, you're a bit more secure.
Okay, so how do people get it?
Just head to saily.com/motorhome Matt, or download Saily from the App Store. That's SAILY, and use the code Motorhome Matt at checkout, and you'll get 15% off your first plan. We'll pop the link in the episode description as well.
It's the Motorhome Matt podcast. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Motorhome Matt.
And it's brought to you with thatleisureshop.com and sponsored by Ripe. It's the Q&A, the question and answers. You ask the questions. Hey, Motorhome Matt will give you the answers. If he doesn't know, he'll jolly well ask somebody who does. First of all, Nick Whittle has been in touch.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Matt and Mr. Keith Gooden. Lovely to be able to chat with you guys. I had a question, and I've watched a lot of your podcasts, and I just wanted some updated information on the subject of SIM cards and which are the best value SIM cards to use, first for UK use and also for EU use. I mean, I note some of the information that you gave us on the IQ Go suggested that was the way to go, but then recent changes meant that you couldn't use the full data allowance in the EU because of fair usage allowance. I mean, I look at the IQ Go model and it looks very interesting and probably the way to go right now. I don't like the fact that you pay for data which basically at the end of 4 weeks, if you don't use it, disappears. I think that's wrong. I think that there should be a model whereby you literally pay for what you use, and that to me is a fair use policy, whereby you're paying for 100 gig and you use that 100 gig and you can use that up to as long as it lasts, with maybe a ceiling on it of perhaps a year, and I think that's fair.
So, Nick got cut off because he used up all of his 90 seconds.
He used up all his data.
The questions. He used up all his data. So, thanks, Nick. What was the question again?
I think it was, which is the best SIM? Probably that was it. Thanks, Nick. So there's loads of options open to you. You are right. There is a fair usage policy when you take a UK registered SIM and you go into Europe. You can only use 25% of the data. If you want an eSIM, we've talked before a lot about Saily, and I can't recommend them enough. They're so easy to use, and I had one in my phone when I was in China. And did I say I went to China? And it was brilliant. It took me a little while because I'm a dad and old to realise you can't make a voice call on an eSIM.
And a creepy bloke. We were called a creepy bloke before we started recording this by Motorhome Maddie.
Creepy blokes.
Creepy blokes, yeah.
What did you say?
I said I was creepy-ish. I took great exception.
Well, at least she spoke to you. Insults are a form of flattery. So going back to SIM cards. So a Saily SIM, dead easy to use. It's an eSIM, and it took me a while to realise I couldn't make a voice call on it. And then Ben, my colleague, said, "You muppet, it's an eSIM, WhatsApp call. So you can only use it for data." And my kids all laughed at me when I told them that, because they all know what these things are. But if you want to just check email and WhatsApp, or do a WhatsApp phone call, an eSIM is ideal. If you want a physical SIM, because you want to put it in a router, or you want to put SIM into something, then something like IQ Go is a great option for you. We use, in the UK, a physical SIM in our Pathway 4G router, and it's an EE SIM, and it's 120 gig, and it lasts for 12 months, or 120 gig. And on Amazon, they are currently just 44 quid. They used to be £60, and they've come right down in price. It's a really easy solution if you want a SIM card in the UK. I could use it in Europe, and I will be, but I can only use 25% of it because of this data usage cap. The other alternative is just buy a SIM card in the country you're visiting. So I use this example in my talk. We went to Belgium, bought a SIM card in the supermarket, and I had to register an address. And of course, I don't have an address in Belgium. So we went to a corner shop and bought another SIM, and the lady there said, "Use my address." And it turned out this lady in this corner shop in Belgium had thousands of people living there, because all using her address to make this SIM card work. So if you're going to buy a SIM in Europe, then maybe don't buy one in a Carrefour, because the girl on the checkout probably won't want to give you her address. So maybe, or the guy, but buy one in a corner shop, and if you need their address, you can use theirs.
Other supermarkets are available. There you go, Nick.
Hope that helps.
Cool.
He was very cool.
He was, wasn't he? Lorraine Dillon's in Truro. Lovely Cornwall. Hi, Matt. Love the show. We really appreciate your knowledge and advice. The following's not a question, but a thank you. Having bumped into you at a Motorhome show in 2023, we recently discovered your podcast on a long drive to Scotland, and the information you imparted to us is immeasurable.
Oh.
You can measure it. As a result, we are fitting Air Ride, and when we discovered our tyres are 6 years old, we had the knowledge to insist we had 3 Peaks proper camping tyres fitted rather than the cheaper van ones, for the reasons you articulated.
Oh, wow.
We bought another EcoFlow backup battery in the sale using your discount code. Good. And Propex are fitting a refillable gas bottle Monday. In essence, this means our credit card is taking a massive bashing, but we now believe that our trip to Europe will be as safe and as warm as possible, and that we have spent our money wisely. Just to say thank you for your advice, and Keith for his upbeat banter. You're a great team. Love Mum.
Oh, thanks, Lorraine.
Love Mum. Lorraine.
Thank you, Lorraine. It was great to meet you at the show. And why did you only just discover the podcast after meeting me in 2023? What went wrong?
She didn't link the two together.
No.
She didn't link the intelligent human being she met in 2023 with the facile show business type that you've become.
Facile?
Not my words.
Don't misspell that one.
Maddies.
Blame Maddie. Thanks, Lorraine. Love it.
Anne Marie O'Hagan's in Derry. What do you call the stuff that you put in your water tank?
Water.
Hey!
We know what you mean, Anne-Marie. So the cleaning stuff you mean, don't you? So PuraClean has been around for years. Never put Milton in it. I know we wash babies' bottles with Milton, and I see people put Milton in their water tank all the time. Truma recommend you don't do that. They make the water heater, and it eats the heater coil. So don't do that, the element in the water tank. So I can also recommend to you Solbio's new water tank cleaner. We've just used it on our Adria Twin, and it was brilliant. You take a bottle, you pour it in, you top it up, you flush it through all the taps, literally run the entire tank through all the taps and the shower head, and don't forget the flush, and then refill it and drain it again through the taps. That washes it through. So you are going to use a lot of water, so it takes a little time, and then brim the tank and you can drink from it, which we do. And it was really good. Our tank had loads of little black bits floating around in it, and they're all gone. So I can recommend that, and it's back in stock at That Leisure Shop. We just had a pallet arrive. So head to thatleisureshop.com and look for the Solbio water tank cleaner. And remember, use the code MotorHomeMatt, get 10% off your first order.
If people want to get in touch with you, Matt, and ask a question, what should they do?
Please do. We always say this, but if you've got a question, I guarantee there are thousands of others with it too. Just head to mhmp.info/askmatt, fill in the form and we'll read it for you, or record it. But please tell us, if you do that, where you are in the world. Hit the orange button. You can listen to it back. You get 90 seconds, Nick. You can record your question and we'll play it into the podcast.
And if you're looking for trusted brands and services, then make sure you visit the Motorhome Matt approved directory. It's at mhmp.info/approved.
There's loads of brands on there that I use. I've some for years. Delighted that Britstops have chosen to partner again with Motorhome Matt and be Motorhome Matt approved. So do go and check it out.
And if you're on the old YouTubery, what should you do then, Matt?
YouTubery. Just make sure you click that little bell and the subscribe button. And if you are listening, please subscribe and follow on your favourite podcast app.